So you're having some trouble with fried liver attack, right? Well, in this video I'm going to explain you how to deal with this annoying opening, and the idea is that I'm going to show you this secret line. It's like, a tricky line where you can get your opponent into a very strong trap. And also I'm going to show you the statistics here. I'm working from Lichess today, so you can see the statistics and you can see how often your opponents will get into this. So how to destroy fried liver attack. Let's talk about that. So, fried liver attack, just to make sure we are, in the right track, we have e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, and then bishop c4, and you can play bishop c5 if you want, that's very well, but today we are going to cover knight f6, and your opponent plays fried liver attack. And this is actually not dangerous if you know how to deal with it, but I guess you're not familiar with the theory and you're having some trouble. So let me show you. The best move in this position is d5. It's not the only move. There are other options that we can cover in some other video. Very interesting, by the way. But today we're going to talk about d5. So after d5, your opponent has to play e takes d5. And in this position, main line is going to be knight a5. And this is what everyone knows, 10 moves ahead of theory, and anyone can win, complicated, interesting, but a lot of theory, so but today I'm going to show you something different. What I'm going to show you here is like a very interesting trap that is not very well known, and your opponent is very likely to fall for it. So that's the idea. Very interesting trap, very not very well known, that your opponent can get into it very easily. So let me show you. So in this position, we're going to play the move knight d4. I can tell you that if your opponent plays d6, he's falling for the trap. This is a totally normal position, very tempting, because they want to discover the bishop to get f7. So I can tell you that many of your opponents will get into this. According to the statistics, 39% of the opponents will get into that, and another big percentage will get into c3, which is actually the right move. I will show you how to deal with the right move too, but keep in mind that many of your opponents, like 2/5 of your opponent, will get into the trap by playing d6. So that's why this is interesting, because already 2/5 of your opponents are losing. Observe how this is winning 72% for black when they get into d6. So it's almost winning for sure. I mean, very likely winning for black once they play d6. So as I said, I will show you later how to deal with c3, but let me show you d6. Here you just capture the pawn with the queen. And then of course they can capture f7, and many of them will capture with the knight, like 83, like big majority of the opponents will get into knight takes f7. It's the most normal move, most logical move, of course. So many of them will get into knight takes pawn, which is losing for sure. But also we'll talk a little about bishop takes f7, just in case you want to know how to deal with that. Well, if they play knight f7, the idea here is that you have this move, queen c6. And then with queen c6, you're attacking here and you're attacking this pawn. But you should know that attacking that pawn is not only getting one pawn. Attacking that pawn is getting a lot of material, or even checkmate in some line. If they continue playing like the normal move, the critical line is mate. So this is not only a pawn. So don't fall for that. It's not only one pawn on g2 what you're getting here. That's why this is so strong and so powerful. So well, at this point, according to statistics, many of them will capture the rook on h8, but basically you have a double threat, very strong. So no matter what they play, it's more or less a similar idea. So let's say they capture the rook, and of course you play here queen takes g2. You're taking the rook. They don't have a way to defend the rook. The only thing is rook f1. Observe there's nothing else. How do they defend the rook? There's nothing. So they need to defend it by putting the rook on f1. If they don't, maybe for example they got a rook here and they might think, well, I already got a rook, so I can lose a rook and this is not the end of the world, so I'm just going to play knight f7. Well, here we just capture, and if they block, well, you have many moves, but I guess the best one is going to be bishop h3. Of course this is decisive advantage. Yeah, this is the best one, bishop h3, and this is winning. I mean, you're taking here was made, he cannot defend, this is winning. Okay, let's keep it simple. This is winning for black. So at this point, you are taking the rook on h1, and most of your opponents, like 58% of your opponents, will get into rook f1. And well, here the engine is saying bishop g4 is a very good move, but actually I want to suggest something simpler and very clear, and it is this one: queen to e4 check. Basically, if they block with the queen, they lose the queen, and if they think, you know what, I don't want to lose my queen, I just block with the bishop, they still receive checkmate. I mean, it's even worse. They receive checkmate because you have the move knight to f3. So that's the idea of this line, and this is why I was saying that this threat here is not only one pawn, it's more than one pawn, it's a rook, or maybe even a checkmate, depending on the line, depending on how they play. Other things you should know here: for example, when they play d6 and you capture, they can play bishop takes f7. That's something you're going to see from time to time, and if that happens, I suggest just king e7. And the idea is that, for example, you're playing a6, attacking the knight and attacking the bishop, so they should find a solution for that. The solution is go back with the bishop. So probably they will go back to c4, I guess, but also they can try bishop b3. I don't know. So let's say bishop b3. I mean, bishop c4, you can do the same thing, right? Let me show you. Bishop c4, you can still play queen c6, and again, this is super good for you. It's winning. Let me show you the percentage. 73% winning games for black. So if they go to c4, you're good. Again, they are falling for the trap. They are falling for the same trap. So maybe they will try bishop b3 to not keep the bishop hanging on c4, but then of course you capture, he captures back, and then yeah, they have a pawn up, but the good thing is that you're going to force this knight from here to here. So you will have a very nice compensation. Even if he's not falling for the trap, the position is very playable and very interesting. You will have activity, you will have compensation. That's what we want. And remember, this is assuming he plays, a very good line. Assuming he doesn't fall for the normal tricky moves. So then you just play a6, then go back, then you just play e4, and after knight g1, well, we have many moves here. Maybe king f7. I think I have some bishop g4 here, exactly as an option. So, I mean, either way, just bishop g4 looks very tempting. I'm going to put this one. I'm going to suggest this one. But in any case, the idea is that you have two bishops on the board. Your king is actually totally okay because, I mean, look at this, right? I mean, all the white pieces on the first rank. That cannot be good. So, yeah, you have two bishops. You have space, controlling the center. A good development for the next moves. So the position is compensated. You have a pawn down, but you have activity. That's all we want, and that's all we need. So let's go back. And that's the line when they capture with bishop takes f7. You have a way to deal with that. And I think we're good with d6. In general, if they play d6, this is what you want, and you have many tricky lines. And worst case, you have a pawn down with very good compensation. That's worst case. So that's the idea. Of course, I could let you know what happens if your opponent doesn't fall for the trap and your opponent knows the line and plays the right move. We need to know that because that can actually happen. So that's what I'm going to show you now. If they play c3, what do we play here? Well, there is a very interesting move at this point. We have some options, but the line I want to suggest is b5. Look at this. The percentage is more or less equal, right? Like we win 48%, we lose 49%, and some draws. So this is totally normal for black pieces. It's actually fine or very good for black pieces, or good, let's say. So yeah, we just play b5 here. And then your opponent should go back to f1 with the bishop. Taking your knight, you take the bishop. Okay, let me show you this. So they take the knight, you just take the bishop, and if they take the pawn, then you just capture here. With the queen it's going to be a little better, because you're still taking the knight over there. You're still taking the pawn on u2. This position is totally okay. It's good for you, so you're going to be fine. So taking the knight is not really getting much. So in general, they are going to move the bishop, which is a little better. So the bishop should go to f1, but let me show you, because this is super tempting. What happens if bishop d3? Well, if bishop d3, you have this move bishop to f5, and then again, it's not like you're winning the game, it's just more or less equal. Like they capture, you capture back. This position is more or less equal. You don't have any advantage or anything. It's extremely playable, probably even very slightly better for black. It's totally okay. It's something we want. So even if they play the best line, but then they don't find bishop f1, and they play bishop d3 instead, just with bishop f5, your position is very good. You're getting this pawn back, for sure. And also you have good development, good knights in the center. This knight is very often like out of play. They don't really know what to do with the knight. Sometimes it's also hanging. So the position is totally okay for black. So, you know, this is a line that we don't need to worry about. And, well, finally, the best line is when they play bishop to f1. It's a line that they will only play in 14% of the games. So it's not really very common. They are not very likely to play that. But if that happens, it's the right move. You should be aware of that. And if they play that, then, well, what do? We're going to play here knight takes d5. You might think, oh, but the knight is hanging. How do you do that? The thing is that you discover, right? When you capture, you discover here. So we are good. They can capture your knight, but then you capture his knight. Here they can capture your pawn with check. And then we have some options, but I wanted to show you this line, king to d8. Super interesting. Let me show you something. The percentage is totally equal, so we are good with this. Once you play king d8, 49-49 for white and black, let me show you how this is good. After king d8, I don't know why they are going to play, but basically the idea is that you have like a pawn down, but again you have good ideas and good things. For example, you're taking this pawn, you have a knight in the center, this bishop is hanging here, your king looks like in danger, but well, not really. You have good options. If they castle, you have ideas like knight f4, like bishop b7. There are good possibilities. If they castle, you're going to play the move rook b8 first, and let's say they go back, then you can play knight f4, for example. So just to show you the idea of what we are trying to get here. So that's the thing. This position is very playable. You have, you know, tactics. You have you're aggressive. You're in a sharp position. That's also what we want. Remember, this is assuming they play like the perfect line where they play c3, where they play bishop f1. Your opponent is not very likely to get into this, but even if they do, you have your ideas in the middle game. So maybe white is a little better, like slightly better, but I could say this is totally playable. So, you know, the main idea, I mean, long story short, if your opponent plays fried liver attack, you play d5 and play knight d4. Many of them will play d6, and you will capture with your queen, and then you will play this idea of queen c6. This is the most likely, it's the critical line, and it's what you're going to see more often if you play this line I'm suggesting in this video. With this, I'm sure you can destroy fried liver attack. Many of them, I mean, once they get here, they can play whatever they want, because this is already decisive advantage for black. It doesn't really matter what they play, they are losing, even if they play the best move. But if they capture the rook, you capture here, then check, and then you're mating with knight f3. Remember that trap, because it's going to help you a lot in your games. I'm sure you can win many games with this idea. I can tell you that for sure. So just try it in your games. So that's the idea. I don't know if you have any question or any idea about this line to destroy a fried liver attack. So leave a comment with your question or your ideas. I will be happy to read about it. Give a like if you think this was helpful. Subscribe. I'll catch you guys in the next. Thank you.